All right, so we got the full chapter 1066 summary here. Every page, every piece of dialogue, we're going over it, so let's get into it. The pirates found shocking things. Frankie asks, what's the meaning of this? That once in the past, this kind of futuristic city existed. And Shaka says it's just a theory, but in the archaeology world, there was once a man who risked his life to find out about that kingdom. Then he found a machine that matches its manufacture date with his theory in a certain place. And Robin says, is that machine from the Void Century? And Shaka says, how much do you know about that? All I remember about this is that it's a painful story. 22 years ago, your birthplace O'Hara is destroyed with a buster call from the Navy. I think it got destroyed because O'Hara knew the existence of that kingdom. The Void Century is there was once existed a highly advanced civilization. The history about the battle of the certain kingdom with 20 kingdoms. The winner is the 20 kingdoms. They founded the world government that the world know these days. To make sure that nobody continued that kingdom's ideology, they erased its existence from history. So yeah, that's giving us more insight into what was going on in the Void Century. Apparently the 20 kingdoms that came to form the world government, and the celestial dragons and all that stuff back in the day, they all teamed up to go against this ancient kingdom or the advanced civilization, and that's how it was defeated. And I'm assuming that Emu was behind all this too. She coerced the 20 kingdoms to coming together and teaming up on them. And as for the ancient civilization, we have theories about who it was. Probably came from the moon, or probably comprised of Lunarians as well, but also Joy Boy was in there too. And the ancient kingdom is maybe what Laugh Tale is as well, possibly, or it comes from that. Most likely comes from it. And Sanji says, why are you talking so easily about this? Shaka said, well, it's only a theory. But Nico Robin, if O'Hara is erased because of this theory, that means that the government has acknowledged that this theory is the truth, right? And Robin says, who do you think you're talking about us like that? The researchers in O'Hara made a theory from researching various important documents. Do you think the government will hear it from a powerful person like you? And he says, no, I'm similar like you too. Even if I work with the government, if I talk about it, I'll be obliterated. Robin asks him, well then how do you know about the kingdom? Every literature from O'Hara has gathered around the world has been, and Shaka's like, well, the will of O'Hara still lives on. After the Buster Call, he went to O'Hara and it became like a burning field because he's an old acquaintance with the scholar leader, Professor Clover. Robin's like, you're Professor Clover's friend? He says he was very interested in those 100 void years. I've known him as an adventurer that gathers every literature around the world. He's been repeatedly captured and imprisoned 10 times by the Navy, but still he became famous as the #1 archaeologist in the world. He then gathered every scholar in O'Hara. Then O'Hara became the sanctuary for archaeologists. When I went there, I can't believe they even burned the Tree of Knowledge. I was surprised. Then when I went into the lake in the central area, I found a lot of literature down in there. Seeing their island is on fire because of the Buster Call, the scholars are trying to stop that. They died to protect the remaining fortunes for the future. So yeah, we saw in the O'Hara flashback that as it was being bombarded from the Buster Call, the scholars in the Tree of Knowledge were throwing all the books out into the water and everything so that they wouldn't get burned. And it turns out that that wasn't all for naught. They did survive. And there's more to it as well. I mean, we talked about it in yesterday's spoilers, but we're getting way more insight into it here. And then Robin says O'Hara did try to expose that kingdom just as you predicted. And Chalk says, I see. Then it was really the truth. Robin says, do you know what happened to the literature in the lake? And Chaka says, that time I wanted to bring it to Punk Hazard, but my plea to the higher ups fell for deaf ears actually. That day I encountered those guys. Then we see 22 years ago in O'Hara in West Blue, months later after the Buster Call incident. And we see VEGAPUNK here. And he looks weird with this weird elongated alien-esque head thing. It's very bizarre. And VEGAPUNK says, who are those guys in the ruins? Is it giants? And then we see these giants and they're like, pull it up. And VEGAPUNK says, why are giants here? What do they do? Do they know the value of those books? And Dragon's there. And he's like, it's been a while, VEGAPUNK. I can recognize you by looking at the standout hair of yours. And VEGAPUNK's like, Dragon, why are you here? Dragon says, that's my line, VEGAPUNK. Your head became larger than before, huh? I was Clover's acquaintance. And VEGAPUNK's like, so you too, huh? I knew him when he was a rough guy who traveled around the world. To label him as someone who tried to destroy the world is unbelievable. That must be some information manipulation. And apparently this was Dragon when he was 33 years old. And this is when VEGAPUNK was 43 years old. And Dragon says, are you interested in those giants? I just checked it earlier. They're not bandits. They came from Elbaf. They know the value of those literatures. Their captain is a strange guy with a bandage covering his body. He said, I won't let the assets that O'Hara left erase from history. You guys from the world government didn't realize its value, so I'm glad they didn't destroy it. Vegapunk says, wait, I'm not. And Dragon's like, I'm tired of hearing it. Even you became the government's lapdog. Even though we, the Liberation, invited you, you rejected it. And Vegapunk's like, don't be ridiculous. Even with my wisdom and technology, what can your poor army make? And Dragon says, I know, you're still a blunt guy as usual, huh? Vegapunk's like, world government is a massive organization, especially the Navy. There's a lot of people who can understand me. Don't lose your objective, Dragon. Dragon says, I know, but with this incident, this really made me angry. Dragon says, in the name of the law, they beat up with violence those powerless researchers just because they have unreasonable opinions. Dragon says, I will make any army that can fight it. Vegapunk says, you who despise violence? Dragon says, just see it, Vegapunk. I will change the world. I won't let Clover's death and the will of O'Hara go in vain. And then we come back to the present, and Shaka says that year, Dragon along with Emporio Ivankov and Bartholomew Kuma made the revolutionary army that shocked the world. So yeah, like we found out yesterday, Dragon formed the revolutionary army because of what had happened at O'Hara. But apparently before this, he had like his own small prototype version of the revolutionary army or something, because it says that he tried to invite Vegapunk to it, but Vegapunk was like, no, rather join the world government, which totally makes sense because Dragon's group was poor and couldn't facilitate Vegapunk to the level that he needed. But also I guess Vegapunk didn't really know about the Void Century stuff yet because he hadn't read these books at that time. So then Shaka says the literature of O'Hara indeed did not fall into the government's hands. Because I'm very interested in it, I secretly went to Elbaf. They let me read all of the documents. In other words, I read all about O'Hara, the secret of the world. It's all inside of my head for progressing my research. And Robin says the name of that giant's captain is Saul, right? And Shock says right now he is hiding. No one will disclose his whereabouts. And Robin says, thank you, Dr. Vegapunk. Please don't let O'Hara's battle go into vain. And Shaka says, I'm an ally for every scholar. That is my nature as a researcher. Then he says, follow me. There are some things I want to show you. So yeah, we found out yesterday as well that Saul survived the attack on O'Hara, but more so being frozen by Aokiji. So it's like, yeah, Aokiji did the right thing. He allowed Robin to escape and he let Saul live as well. And Saul, you know, finding out everything about what O'Hara was doing and what the world government was actually doing, he got this group of giants together, took all of the books from the water that they threw out of the tree, and then took them all to Elbaf, and now he's still alive, which is awesome because he's also a D, Jaguar D Saul, so like that still needs to be explored. So then we go to the Egghead Fabrio phase, and we're picking up with Luffy's group here, and he says, oi, there's no place to ride it, Chopper, and Chopper says, I see, so it's an automatic type. Well then, move, robot. So this is picking up from the end of the previous chapter where we saw them coming into contact with like that ancient robot thing. Maybe it needs a password, and Luffy's like, no, it probably has a name. Maybe call its name to move it. Move, Robonosuke. And then suddenly the robot explodes, and then we see Vegapunk, and he says, please help me. Darn it, it still failed. Someone please help me. While I'm warping, the space is distorted. And Luffy says, what's with this guy? His situation is just like Kinemon. I'll help you. Vegapunk's like, I'm drowning, I'm very sorry. You are Dragon's son, right? I knew you'll come. Welcome. And Luffy's like, hey, Gramps, are you floating? And Vegapunk says, I'm very happy you're fine. And Bonnie's like, Vegapunk. And he says, you wear it too, right? There's a hover function in those shoes. Push the side button while you pull down the lever. And Luffy's like, push it down like this. And Vegapunk's like, yeah. Luffy's like, oh, I flew too high. So I guess he's going up in the air along with the rest of them. And Vegapunk's like, please help me. And then we see what Vegapunk looks like. And it says, Dr. Vegapunk, world-renowned genius, special science group team leader, humble genius researcher appears. So like I talked about in the previous video, I expected Vegapunk to pretty much look like this. He looks like a traditional, you know, old scientist guy. He kind of looks like Einstein, but like, you know, manga Einstein. And he doesn't have like the crazy head that he had in the flashback in O'Hara with Dragon. He has like a half of an apple thing, and it looks like the top of his head's cut off as well. Maybe that could be in reference to like the apple dropping on Newton or something. But getting the reveal of Vegapunk here, so many other reveals in this chapter. Can't wait to fully read this one when it comes out on Sunday. But let me know what you think about this one in the comments, guys. And if you liked the video, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.